Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Two Way. Thank you for joining. Appreciate those who are watching on YouTube and those here on the Two Way platform. If you are here with me on the Two Way platform, you're welcome to join in. Take lots of questions from you all tonight. So if you'd like to ask a question, make a comment, please raise your hand. This platform is dedicated to peace, love, and understanding, civility, learning. So if you do join in either on the chat or by voice and video, please remember to show presumption of grace to all and respect everybody. We're here to learn. The more you disagree with someone on this platform, the better opportunity you have to learn. I'll talk a little bit about where I think the race is and developments from today, and what's going on tomorrow. Vice President Harris put out a statement early this morning about the 3-year anniversary of the tragic death of 13 American service personnel in Afghanistan. Was not otherwise seen. And tomorrow, she's got no public event. She's doing a video address to the Methodist Episcopal Church's 52nd quadrennial session of the General Conference in Columbus, Ohio. But that is it. So that'll effectively be off the trail every day since the convention, which is an interesting choice. She did put out a new ad today, which we'll look at in a little bit, talk about that. And the Republican Day was largely devoted in front of the camera to Donald Trump doing 2 events related to that same tragic anniversary, as well as in Detroit, getting the endorsement from one of the Democratic Party's former Democrat, most prominent military service personnel, Tulsi Gabbard, former Congresswoman, former presidential candidate. We'll take a little bit of look at that in a moment as well of her event with Donald Trump today. Like Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard pledges to do a lot of campaigning for Donald Trump. We'll see if she does that. She's been involved reportedly in his debate prep. Probably the most interesting reporting I think I have at my fingertips now relates to Trump world, where it's a big sprawling world, Trump world, and there are people who are very dark right now. They see their candidate as out of control and unfocused and angry. They see the press coverage as something that will not change, and it's favoring Vice President Harris. And while none of them that I talk to believe the race is lost by any means, there is a feeling of frustration that they may be facing uphill climb throughout the end of the summer into the fall, and are a little bit of wit's end over the contrast between the 2 candidates, one who seems to be performing quite well, Kamala Harris, and one who does not. On the other hand, particularly after today, where the contrast was on national security, where they see a cloistered Vice President Harris, where they see her attempts, they believe, weak on the economy and immigration to try to neutralize those issues, and a first wave of private polling that gives them confidence that the 4 Sunbelt states may well hold. And of course, as you know, if those 4 states hold for Donald Trump, Kamala Harris is back to effectively where Joe Biden was before the debate, which is one electoral college path, the 3 Great Lakes states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then Nebraska too, has a path to exactly 270 electoral votes and no other path. Those 4 Sunbelt states, the Democrats argue, are all in play. And so they don't agree with the analysis, but there's a quiet confidence if you go state by state with any of the senior Republicans with access to data. There's a pretty quiet confidence that once Vice President Harris is forced to engage more than she has, particularly on the economic record, the national security record, the immigration record, once she's engaged on those, that those states will go back to what had existed for some time, which is what we call small but durable leads. And again, that's the big tipping point. If Vice President Harris can't put any of those 4 states in play, she's got a very tough task to win the election. So we can talk more about that. Again, it's quite a contrast. Normally, Trump world, like most campaigns, there's a general drift in one direction. But in the last day, I've heard, kind of like the worst of times and not the best of times, but a lot more confidence. And again, coming out of today, they believe they've won the Friday news cycle and today. And I think there's a good argument to be had that they have, and that's two more news cycles than they won in the entire time Kamala Harris has been the presumptive Democratic nominee, with the possible exception of the day she put out her economic plan. But they're feeling a lot better, at least in that sector. So as I said, Tulsi Gabbard endorsement today. Not sure anybody would argue that this is going to change the election, but it does allow them to feel a little bit momentum. And she, like Bobby Kennedy, a Democrat, former Democrat, with extraordinary kind of crossover appeal, in the sense of there's a populist opposition to the forever wars in particular, that, as I've said repeatedly here and elsewhere, is really an underappreciated emotional issue for so many Americans. So let's take a look at a little bit of Tulsi Gabbard today endorsing Donald Trump and extolling him as the right choice.
So I mean what I say when I share with you that I know that President Trump understands the grave responsibility that a president and commander-in-chief bears for every single one of our lives. Whether you're a soldier, you're an airman, a Marine, sailor, or a coastie, he keeps us in his heart in the decisions that he makes. We saw this through his first term in the presidency, when he not only didn't start any new wars, he took action to de-escalate and prevent wars. He exercised the courage that we expect from our commander-in-chief in exhausting all measures of diplomacy, having the courage to meet with adversaries, dictators, allies, and partners alike in the pursuit of peace, seeing war as a last resort. The truth is, as we head towards our decision as a country in November, the same cannot be said about Kamala Harris. In fact, the opposite is true, and we're living through this reality today as this administration has us facing multiple wars on multiple fronts and regions around the world, and closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House, where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief.
Yeah. So, as you recall, 4 years ago, she was a Democratic presidential candidate. She's a Democratic member of the House, but now she is there on behalf of Donald Trump. And she's, again, a lot like Bobby Kennedy in the sense that when she's on message, when she's speaking about foreign policy or corporate interests or the deep state or big tech, with a kind of populism and a kind of a patriotic fervor, appeals to tens of millions of people. And I think if they both campaign hard, if they get Joe Rogan on board, if they continue to flood the zone on podcasts as Donald Trump is doing, I do think it can impact the outcome of the race. Not the only factor, but I think the two of them together is pretty powerful. And there's talk that there are other Democrats coming. I'm not sure who, but there are other Democrats who will come out for Donald Trump. All right, a new Harris ad, 60-second. They claim it's in rotation. They put out at least one other 60-second ad. In most campaigns, when you see a 60-second ad, it's not real, that they're not putting money to actually air that thing. They're simply putting it out as a video press release, maybe air it a few times so they can say they didn't lie to the press that it's a real ad. But it certainly gives us insight into the economic message that Vice President Harris wants to drive. I'd tell you to look at her performance here. It's largely from the North Carolina event where she unveiled her economic plan. And then the thing that Republican and Democrats talk about, which is how much should she acknowledge that people are hurting in the Biden-Harris economy. So let's look at the spot.
Every day across our nation, families talk about their plans for the future. And they talk about how they're going to achieve them financially. And prices are still too high. When I am elected president, I will make it a top priority to bring down costs. We should be doing everything we can to make it more affordable to buy a home. Under my plan, more than 100 million Americans will get a tax cut. I will help families, letting you keep more of your hard-earned money. As president, I will be laser focused on creating opportunities for the middle class that advance their economic security, stability, and dignity. If you want to know who someone cares about, look who they fight for. Donald Trump fights for billionaires and large corporations. I will fight to give money back to working and middle class Americans. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Interesting, some of the offense there, some of the defense. Yet again, another ad, as has been true, I think, of every Biden or Harris and Trump ad I've seen. No danger of that going viral. And in presidential politics, the best ads are the ones that at least have the potential to get that earned media push rather than what they put behind it. And as I said, I find it hard to believe that they're really putting a lot of money behind that. So I'm going to open it up here to folks, eager to hear what people think. If you're not John Podhoretz, who's from the Upper West Side, please say where you're from, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind. And we'll cycle some folks in from all over. I see some familiar faces who I'm grateful for. If you've not been involved in speaking before on camera here and you'd like to, please don't hesitate to raise your hand, and we'll get to as many as we can. But as is important tradition, let's start with John Podhoretz. John, tell us what's on your mind. Tell us what's on your mind, sir.
I was startled by how good Tulsi Gabbard was as a surrogate, as I was by RFK on Friday. I had forgotten how effective she was in the debates in 2019. In fact, she was particularly effective against Kamala Harris at a particular point. I don't quite remember why. And I don't like her politics. I really don't. I don't like her form of populism. I don't like, she kind of was an apologist for the Assad regime in Syria at a certain point in the 2010s. That unnerves me. She's a bit of a paranoiac, but she has a significant military career as a military policeman. She was deployed to Iraq and Kuwait, and she was a lieutenant colonel when she retired from her guard service. And she's a hell of a good speaker. Now, she's a surrogate, so it doesn't matter. I don't know that she brings anybody in. Once again, you're hearing a kind of message that if Trump could do it himself, could tip the balance of the race in his favor. I don't know whether it matters whether a surrogate can or can't, but her line that we would be risking terrible jeopardy to the United States by having someone as untested and unserious about foreign policy matters as Kamala Harris is exactly where the Trump people should go politically. And that, Trump 4 years didn't start a war, didn't do this, didn't do that, has a record as president of behaving in ways on foreign policy that the Biden administration turned their back on. And that's a pretty serious message. And you said that it's kind of amazing. We had an exchange privately about her going off the campaign trail this weekend. Now it's 4 days. I'm sorry, that's weird. It's weird. Like she can try to remain silent. 5 days. 5 days tomorrow. That is, she's only been a candidate for what, like a month. And people don't know who she is, and they don't. So she doesn't want people to know who she is. And I know, like my colleague A. Greenwald thinks that she can keep this going forever. And I think at some point it's like, wait a minute, I just watched this ad where she said she's going to lower grocery prices and she's going to fix price gouging and she's going to help the middle class. And you know what? She's not telling me how she's going to do any of this. And then she doesn't say anything. And Trump's going around making speeches about it everywhere, and she's not saying anything. I think it's going to start rankling ordinary voters, not people who are going to vote for the Democrat no matter what. So we always have to separate that out. But she's had about as good a month as you can possibly have. And cracks are showing there. Whether the cracks are self-generated because she's not responding to anything. And remember, we just had a major incident in the Middle East Saturday night, Sunday morning. Israel destroyed 6,000 Hamas Hezbollah rockets before they could be launched at the center of Israel. And neither the president nor the vice president has said anything about it. That's weird. It's weird. Weird stuff is happening. I don't think it's good for a campaign to be weird. I don't mean weird the way Waltz talks about J.D. Vance and Trump being weird. I'm talking about like what you expect from a candidate who is trying to get elected talking about what is actually in the news and in the headlines, so you know what they would do when they were president.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think if she does her interview in the next couple of days, which I think she will, and she's good or better, I think a lot of the concerns you're raising for normal voters who have them will be erased. In terms of Tulsi Gabbard, she takes some of Trump's most powerful issues. She puts the face of a veteran, of a woman, and someone who, in my experience, people think is quite likable. She puts those three faces on those positions. I think that's more helpful than most surrogates. And I think she may well be out there and maybe with Trump on the road some. John, stay with us. Let's bring in Wendy. Wendy, you're unmuted. Remind folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
Northern suburb of Minneapolis, and I am supporting conservatives all the way down the line, Trump, and all the way down to the local level. You had me on a couple days ago, and I asked you to how you could give me hope with for the Trump campaign, and I listened to Sean Spicer's podcast after listening to you guys this morning with the Trump campaign manager on.
James Blair,
talking about the ground game that they've got going, which I've always felt that Democrats had a way better ground game than we have over the last few elections. And I was quite impressed what he was talking about. I was wondering, Mark, if you watched that podcast, I know you brought it up, and what you thought of what they're doing in those battleground states, you know, the door-to-door stuff, the stuff the Democrats have always been really good at.
Yeah. Well, look, even Republicans will concede privately they're going to lose the early vote, the absentee vote in every one of the 7 states. So they're going to have to make it up on election day, and that's risky because it could be bad weather. There could be some event, in an individual state or in a populated area that could make a big difference. So they're going to go into election day with a deficit, and they're building a very big operation. But they're also, James Blair extolled the notion of being able to coordinate with these outside groups, with the super PAC, with these outside groups, none of whom have, institutional experience turning out the vote this way. So a lot more money. The coordination allows them to spend more than if it was just on the campaign. But they have those 2 risks. Well, 3 risks, I'd say. One is they're not banking early vote the way the Democrats are, so they're subject to election day vagaries. 2 is these outside groups are not experienced for the most part, and so they're hoping that it can happen. And then 3 is the coordination. We saw it in 2004 with the Democrats operation that was called American Coming Together, I think it was called, with a lot of outside groups trying to do the ground game, and it's just not as effective as if it's tightly controlled by the campaign and the national committee. So it's possible it'll work, but it's also possible it won't. John?
I will say I am hearing from regular Republican sources, so they are, they would be inclined to have this view because their interests are not being served. But there is real concern about the systematic way in which Trump, over the course of the years between 2021 and 2024, in taking over the apparatus of the Republican Party, putting his daughter-in-law in charge of the Republican National Committee, has actually dismantled the ground game and has outsourced it. Now, you can make a claim that centralized ground gaming from a central Republican National Committee location, maybe that's bad. Maybe it's better if it's done at the local level, but they're not really outsourcing it to the local level. A lot of the outsourcing has been done to Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA. And what Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA knows how to do is how to raise money online. Not clear that it knows how to organize people to go vote en masse, neighborhood by neighborhood. That was something, for example, that Karl Rove in 2004, that same year that you mentioned, proved an absolute genius at by kind of arranging the entire country in terms of precinct, with precinct captains who had sub-precinct captains, who had block captains, to try to get their voters out and to get their neighbors, to get voters to get their neighbors out and stuff like that. Very, very successful. Romney tried to go high tech in 2012 with a get out the vote machine that literally broke on election day, called Project Orca. They were supposed to be able to know where the votes were and to go out and get them, and the system was overloaded and broke. And my sense from people who do this for a living is that a terrible risk has been taken if you want Trump to win, in the decision that is frankly a little incomprehensible and starts raising weird questions about what it is the Trump family wants from the money that's been raised in the hundreds of millions of dollars to get Trump elected, to decentralize. They're actually, generally speaking, they want to centralize things. Suddenly they're giving all this money out to third parties and saying, you go do it. Weird. That's not normal. That's not a normal political instinct.
It's not. Wendy, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's bring in Josh Golden. Josh, your beard puts John Podoritz's beard to shame. Let's start with that. Remind everybody where you are.
For sure.
Where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, sir.
I'm in North Carolina, and I'm supporting Trump. I guess I got more of just a comment. I'm super excited about Tulsi Gabbard being on board. I actually wanted her for VP. That was my VP pick. But I'm happy with where she's at. But my comment really was, on Twitter, I've been seeing these posts from the Kamala Harris campaign, and it's like, I don't really feel like they know how to attack MAGA. I'm not trying to help them, but the way they're attacking doesn't work. And what I've seen is they keep posting this stuff about how Cheney people and Bush people and, Romney people are coming out and endorsing her, where we don't care. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to work. Like those, we don't want them. You know what I'm saying? We're for Trump because we don't want that anymore. Yeah. So it's really interesting. It's almost like even listening to the DNC speech with her, it was like listening to a neocon, right? Like some of the things she was, I know, I'm sorry, but like some of the stuff she was saying, felt like a neocon or something, which was really interesting to me. And I just don't think it's going to, I don't know. To me, she looks like the establishment, right? Instead of
Josh, does Harris have a better chance of beating Trump than Biden did?
Probably. Okay, if she can stay hidden, I think hidden is working for her. I don't know how it would go if she got out and started talking. I don't know.
Yeah. And if Donald Trump called you and said, "What can I do better?" What would you tell him to do better?
Well, sometimes I've been watching the podcast he's on, and I wish he would just stay on message and answer the questions. Sometimes I just want to take him and speak for him. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
But yeah, I wish he would just stay on message, man, and you got it.
Yeah. And how's your governor's race going?
Honestly, I haven't really paid much attention to that. I've not even really looked at that much, so I don't know.
Are you a native North Carolinian?
I am. Yeah. We're not big fans of Cooper, but I honestly haven't followed it. I probably should.
Yeah. He's not running for re-election. He's term limited out.
Okay, well, there you go.
That's all right. There you go. John Podoritz, any questions for Josh? Hold on, you're muted. Stand by. It's unmute. Go ahead, John.
So, Josh, generally speaking, if you want your candidate to win, you want them to get as many votes as possible. And I think you reflect a view in the Republican Party, speaking as a neocon, that is exclusionary, and that's fine because you don't want us to have the influence that you think that we shouldn't have. But you do understand that Trump should want more people rather than fewer to vote for him, right? And that generally speaking, if you want someone to vote for you, the best indicator of whether someone's going to vote for you in your party is that they voted for you in your party or they voted for your party before. And so this is a conundrum that you got to face, which is that you don't want Trump to be ideologically impure by your lights, but if he isn't, he's going to lose. Just so you understand, why do you think he's talking about how only Democrats are going to have a national abortion policy? Like, he is already heterodox on some issues that maybe you don't care about that much. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just saying, like, this is an interesting. You are facing. You represent a conundrum for the Republican Party, which is that it has wanted to purify itself and cleanse itself of things that it thinks are wrong or sinful. But like, if you need to get 50%, you need to get 271 electoral votes. That's not the best. I mean, I'm asking you, do you agree that maybe that is really not the best strategy to pursue? Like, he should try to trick me and think that he's my friend, and then he can screw me after the election.
Sure, I get what you're saying. Okay. I think that I think he's actually. I mean, the fact that you got Bob RFK and Tulsi Gabbard, these kind of folks coming in. I mean, I think the tent is getting bigger, not smaller. Personally, so like, and a lot of people. I mean, even just your regular Joes who wouldn't even have known what a neocon was 10 years ago, or even the term, are talking about it, and they don't like it. Yep. So I think it's a big, I don't know. I feel like it's a very populist movement. That's sort of,
Mr. Golden, how'd you find two-way?
YouTube algorithm, and I'm very thankful. Love it.
Beautiful. I'm very thankful for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you. Come back often. Bring your friends. Appreciate it. All right. Mr. Jeffrey Perry, please remind everybody where you're from, who you're supporting, and tell us what's on your mind tonight.
Yeah, I live in the northern suburbs of Chicago and supporting Harris. And I guess a couple of things I was thinking about. One is, I know that it's been frustrating for people in terms of wanting to hear from Harris, et cetera. But I don't think the average person is hanging on every single news cycle in terms of, when are we going to hear from her and so on and so forth. I think people focus more on big events. So if you look at the DNC and the fact that the DNC ratings were much higher than the RNC ratings, she's continuing to raise money. She's raised over $550 million since launching her campaign. And I think people are waiting for the next big thing, which will likely be her interview this week. Now, I did hear that she was planning on doing a joint interview with Tim Walz, and I don't know if there was some strategy around that. My personal view is I think it would be more effective if she did a interview just with herself and maybe did a follow-up interview with Tim Walz, but perhaps there's some logic behind that.
Who would you tell her to let interview her? Who would you recommend?
You mean in terms of networks?
Well, or people like Jen Psaki or the cast of The West Wing. Who would you recommend?
No, I would, believe it or not, who would be really great at it, and I don't think he'll be asked to do it, would be someone like Michael Schmerkanish. But I don't think he's in the running for that. But I do think there's a lot riding on this interview, since she said it was going to be by the end of the month.
Will you be nervous when she does the interview, or you think she got this?
No, I won't be nervous, but I think that one of the other things that she needs to do as a candidate is to not give people who may be nervous reasons to be nervous. So, for example, if you say, "Oh, I'm going to do a joint interview with Tim Walz," some people will say, "Well, why are you doing a joint interview with Tim? Is that a crutch, as opposed to just doing the interview yourself, if you will?" Or when they talked about the debates, and I don't know if this was true or not, but I heard that there was some talk about her wanting notes in the debate versus not. Right. Anything that she can do to not give the opposition ammunition to say either there's a reason to be nervous or she's not ready for prime time and so on and so forth. She needs to counter all of that and just go all in. So
Jeffrey, I'd loved hearing all your thoughts. Do you have a question or you're good?
Yeah, I guess one question I have is for people who are Trump supporters. I hear people all the time saying, well, RFK did a great job of delivering the messages, or Tulsi Gabbard did a great job, or Tom Cotton did a great job, and so on and so forth. So when you have a candidate, when you constantly have to be concerned about the candidate staying on message, doesn't it raise the question of why that candidate as opposed to someone else who could deliver the messages and deliver the policies, rather than someone that you constantly have to monitor who's demonstrating a lack of leadership skill and a lack of discipline? Why not turn the page to someone else who could actually carry forward, these policies that many people support?
Awesome, Jeffrey. Thank you. Love having you come back. Appreciate it. All right. Katie McGann, sorry. Katie, welcome. Tell everybody where you're from, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please. Oh, hold on. Got to unmute you. My fault. There you go.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I'm from just outside of Portland, Oregon. I'm a teacher, and my husband is a veteran who works in manufacturing, which is, both of us worked all through COVID. We're not part of the laptop class. I'm going to be voting for Trump this time.
Who did you vote for in 16 and 20, Katie?
I did not vote in 16 because my husband had just gotten stationed in Virginia, and I was a California native, so I didn't get to vote. And then in 20, I did not vote. But before that, I was an Obama voter.
Okay, so what attracted you to Trump this time?
And I wanted to respond directly to a comment that I've heard a few times, was given January 6th, how can anyone support Trump? And what I'm not hearing is, given everything we saw in 2020 with the riots and everything that happened here in Portland specifically, no one cared about us. Trump, to be fair, did send resources here, including Chad Wolf came, and Portland said, sorry, we don't want your help. We're looking at the possibility of road tolls now. Our electricity prices have gone up 40% in 3 years. We're almost last in education. I'm not seeing a compelling argument for liberal politics.
Katie, do you attribute that to the liberals in your state, to Biden-Harris? What do you attribute all that to?
The entire Democratic platform. This push towards EVs. I know Massachusetts is now going to start mandating all electric trucks by 2025. And it's so short-sighted. There's so many bad ideas. I can't point to one thing and say, great idea.
What, if anything, do you find appealing about Vice President Harris as a potential president?
I don't know. Can you tell me one of her positions? Because she can't seem to articulate any of them to us.
Can I say that your use of the term "the laptop class" is fantastic. I've never heard that before, and if you could, you should go online and trademark that, because you have crystallized something very important. Because you're not a your husband works in manufacturing, you're a teacher, but the two of you, the people who worked during COVID without staying home and had to deal with all the inconveniences that everybody like that had to deal with, particularly people in service industries. I don't know how much they've forgotten that. I don't know how much they've forgotten the fact that a lot of us got to sit home and we had to put on masks when we went outside, and it was really annoying, and didn't have to have them on 8 hours a day just to be front-facing with the public.
Even worse, I teach early childhood education, and the delays in what we've seen in children and the masks that we put on them, the impact that this leadership had on children, it's not forgivable. The delays that we're seeing in children, and it's not getting better.
Katie, are
And
you
so I
inspired?
think I was just
Go ahead,
sorry.
John. Go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say that I think that there are issues that don't become issues that aren't crystallized as issues.
It's the memory.
Their vibe issues or memory issues or things like that. The politics of America was completely distorted or controlled or contained by the financial meltdown of 2008, which was never a leading issue in an election, including in 2008. I think arguably it's what got Trump elected in 2016. But you couldn't say what it was that made the 2008 meltdown the cause of the Trump 2016 victory. And I think that there are things here that we cannot crystallize or calculate or get numbers on, but that have this feeling of there were people who liked this and supported it and thought it was good and important and healthy, and that everybody who thought otherwise was a monster and wanted to kill their grandmothers, and people who tolerated it, lived through it. We didn't have riots about it. We didn't scream about all of that. But remember the feeling and remember the experience and know what happened to their kids. That may be a kind of
Our local school
undertone. Okay, yeah. An undertone thing that won't be calculable, but maybe is the wrong track number. And if the wrong track number remains where it has been and Harris's numbers go up, but the wrong track number remains where it is, that's not going to be good for her. I mean, at some point, she is the incumbent because Trump isn't the incumbent. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Katie,
I wanted to congratulate you. Really, that was great.
Katie H., are you a Trump supporter or a Harris supporter? You're unmuted.
Oh, sorry. I'm a neither supporter.
Neither supporter. Where do you live?
Virginia.
Are you gonna pick one eventually, or are you sitting this one out?
I'll probably sit this one out.
Yeah. Who'd you vote for in 20 and 16?
Reluctantly, Donald Trump.
Both times?
Yeah, it was a vote against. So a vote against Hillary and a vote against Biden.
Right. So tonight, I'm just calling on people in random. We're getting a lot of Trump supporters, so we'll remedy that in just a minute. Not all, but a lot. I'd love just a conversation between the two Katies because we've got you from coast to coast here. So Katie H., you got any questions or comments regarding what Katie M said?
Well, I am a conservative. I'm a former conservative. I said that I actually worked on election day on Project Orca, and it did crash while I was at my poll. So I guess my question, just to kind of piggyback and go along with what the other Katie was saying, is why do you think it is that Kamala is getting credit for all of the change and hope that she wants to bring when she is in office now? What are we doing? We're changing to her from her? I guess I'm confused by what she's promising and why everyone is so excited that things are going to be so brand new and fresh when it's the same thing.
Katie, what do you think of that?
Because they think we're stupid. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. I think that they're counting on us forgetting, or they think that I'm going to care more about abortion, or I'm going to care more that some man put his feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk on January 6th. All of these things are true and do matter. But again, when I go to the grocery store, I don't care about January 6th. When I pay my electricity bill, I don't care about January 6th or abortion. When I think about my kids' education, I had to put my kids in private school for 2 years because the public school wasn't open, and I have special needs kids.
Yeah. Katie H., why aren't you voting? Why aren't you voting for Trump? It was that guy's feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk, wasn't it?
January 6th was probably, for me, was one of those things. I feel like it's one of those, I've described it as I feel like every day I don't want to have to sigh big every day about something that the president did, from my party did. I feel like every day I'm just he's so embarrassing to me. And I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, to steal John Podhoretz's line, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills every day when I look with both sides. I just don't see the appeal of either side.
Yeah. Katie, I didn't mean to make light of what you said about January 6th, but we try to joke around here a little bit. And I did like the image of the feet on the desk. If this works out well, the next two-way program will be Coast to Coast Katie's.
Oh, I like it. I'm
please
in.
be
The
ready.
Battling Thomasons and the Coast to
Everything
Coast
the other Katie
Katie's.
said on the last one. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Would you say you agree that you don't like to be embarrassed of your president? What you just said, or no? Yeah, but you're still going to support him. Last question for both of you. I'd love just you to say, who do you think is going to win and why? Katie H. first.
Oh, I think Kamala will win, and I think it's just because like people want to feel good, and if she is making people feel good for whatever reason, like if people are believing the stuff that she's saying, I mean, it feels good, and she's beautiful, and she's got a great smile, and and just I don't know, President Trump is just so grumpy. Like he just seems like the grumpy grandpa these days, and he just says crazy things. So like if I was, I don't know.
Okay.
Is it bad for me to hope that like maybe he gets so defeated that he goes away? I don't know.
No, that would put you in line with tens of millions of other people in
Yeah.
America. Katie, again, who's going to win and why?
I think Harris is going to pull it off because she just has too many assets as far as the media goes and the narrative. People are going to hear what they want to hear. And I just think, she's got too many advantages.
Okay. I'm very grateful to you both for joining, and I hope you'll both come back and participate regularly. Really,
sorry
very
I couldn't bring
to
the
you.
dog tonight.
That's all right. We don't always
He's ready
need the
for
dog.
bed.
All right. Thank you both. Come back regularly. Katie,
Thank
how'd
you.
you hear about two-way?
Been listening for a while, but probably through the YouTube algorithm.
All right. Thank you, YouTube algorithm. Oops. Hold on. All right. Thank you both. Again, please come back regularly. Let's unmute David. David, thank you for joining. Tell everybody where you're from, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
I am joining you from the People's Republic of Brooklyn. The reason that I wanted to raise my hand was I feel like there's a constituency that I love this platform, and I feel that you covered many constituencies, especially the Republican never Trumpers of every variety, and the Trumpers.
David, are you the one Trump supporter in Brooklyn, or you're for Harris?
No. I represent I think a lot of people in Brooklyn actually who are to the left of Kamala Harris. They're either reluctantly voting for her, they're holding their noses and voting for her, or they are voting for Jill Stein or Cornel West, our votes don't count anyway. So this is a purely academic exercise. No vote in New York has counted for decades.
So do you think Harris is to the left of Biden, or not necessarily?
Not particularly. I mean, I watched her entire speech, and I felt that it was generic Democrat with a capital G and a capital D.
So where is she falling short of your
any kind?
But you want her to be for single payer? Where is she falling short of what you'd like to see?
What I'd like to see? I'd like to see Bernie Sanders. That's what I'd like to see. But
yeah, and the fact that he spoke at the convention and endorsed her doesn't mean anything to you?
Well, he endorsed Hillary too after the party put a knife in his back. So he's a very forgiving man. That's all I can say.
More so than you.
Absolutely. I'm still. Do you think
America? Do you think America would elect someone as liberal as you want?
I don't know. I think he had a chance in 2020.
Yeah,
as a general election candidate,
to win the general election.
He didn't make it to the general election, but I think if he had, yes, I think he would have had a chance against Trump.
Yeah, David, how do you explain the fact that Donald Trump, having showed America who he is over a term, has a chance to win again? How would you explain that?
Well, I would explain that by saying that I've been watching this platform and being exposed to a lot of Trump supporters, and here's my bottom line on this election, which is, it seems to me that Kamala Harris is basically a status quo candidate. And I don't think this is a status. I don't think this country is in, as John said, ever since the financial collapse in 2008, I think this country has been in an angry and depressed mood. And I don't think a country in an angry and depressed mood goes for a status quo candidate. I think they go for something that will express their disquiet.
So you think Trump's going to win?
Trump has always expressed people's disquiet.
So you think Trump's
does.
So you think Trump's going to win?
I'm afraid that he's going to win. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he has. I think he has an edge. And if you look at polls where she's only up by 1 or 2 points, with all the joy and all the enthusiasm, that to me says that he still has the edge.
Yeah. What would you tell Vice President Harris she needs to do to win?
Be more like Tim Walz.
Which is what? Be assistant coach? What does that mean?
I don't know. That just means that I'm more enthusiastic about the things that he said in his speech and the way that he comes across than I am about her. So,
yeah. David,
I don't know what I would advise her to do except keep to the joy strategy, because I think the more she gets into specifics, the more she's going to be pulled down.
Yeah. David, did I understand you correctly to say that you have a greater understanding of why Donald Trump is popular by listening to Trump supporters on two-way?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What have you heard them say that kind of tease that out for you? What kinds of things?
Well, a lot of things, like, a woman from Portland was just saying, just the general dissatisfaction that people have with the way the country is going.
Right.
But also, I think the criticism that, whether it's valid or not, the feeling that there were no wars during the Trump administration, which isn't technically true at all. There were U.S. troops were active all over the place: Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. But the feeling that we've gotten into much hotter entanglements.
Well, that's not a feeling. That's a fact.
Right.
That's a fact, not a feeling.
That I see that powering a lot of this.
David, were you better off?
I don't disagree.
Are you better off now in terms of your family's finances than you were under Donald Trump?
No, I would say about the same.
About the same.
But I see.
Which part of Brooklyn do you live in?
I see people under 35 much worse off, including my children.
So you could see, are any of your kids going to support Trump?
No.
Which part of Brooklyn do you live in?
Bed-Stuy.
Bed-Stuy. You know how much a bagel cost when Trump was president? A lot less.
Everything. Yes, that's true.
But that hasn't affected your personal finances in a way that makes you worried about the difference between Trump versus Harris?
I think that there are a lot of baby boomers, including me, who may be suffering at the grocery store, but meanwhile their retirement accounts are up and all of that. Their house values are up. So I think it's a generational thing. I think people under 40 are suffering.
Yeah. David, thank you. Come back regularly, please, because John and I can represent Manhattan.
This is
we represent Manhattan, but we can't represent Brooklyn.
I think that is a very interesting and original point that you just made about the generational problem that despite the fact that we have the Harris Walz rhetoric about Trump likes billionaires and all of that, the rally of the stock market this year, if it should continue through the election, will likely be the decisive factor in her getting elected, because you will have people saying, "Oh my God, my retirement, my 401k is up 25% this year alone. Maybe I shouldn't switch horses in midstream." So you need people who have 401ks with some value in them for that to be a real issue. But if you are over 50 and you've been putting your money into that 401k for 30 years, I'm startled when I look and see what's happened just in the last 2 months myself. And that's an era of good feeling. People don't feel that at the grocery store. But again, Biden was showing weirdly unexpected strength early on this year with people who are nominally supposed to be Trump voters, which are like, white people over 65 who were supposedly 80% going to be Trump voters. And the polling was showing pretty good numbers for Biden there. And that may be the explanation. And I hadn't heard anybody quite summarize it that way. And I think you're onto something.
You also have a
and the housing too, right? Exactly.
Right. That's benefiting people who have been in their houses for decades. Yeah. They're doing quite well.
Who've paid off their mortgages. Yeah.
Right. And everyone under 40 is frozen out of the market. So that's a split.
David, loved everything you said, loved your manner, loved your calm support for Bernie Sanders, but most of all, I loved your acknowledgement that this is a platform where folks like you can better understand Trump supporters, because that's a big part of why we have these conversations. So I'm grateful to you for saying that, and I hope you'll come back regularly.
Well, I'm grateful for the platform. It's great.
Thank you, David. All right, Ms. Mullen, delighted to have you here.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Tell the few people on here who don't know where you live and who you're supporting what those answers are, and then floor is yours.
I live in extreme western North Carolina in the mountains north of Atlanta. And I am unaffiliated, but were I to classify myself, I'd say I'm center left, maybe.
Who are you going to vote for in the presidential race in your battleground state?
I will vote for Harris.
Yeah, why?
I would never vote for Trump. I like Harris. I like her well enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think she's going to win North Carolina?
It's more encouraging than it was. I don't know if she's going to win. They say she has a chance. It'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting state to watch, I think.
What makes you think she'll be an excellent or good enough commander-in-chief? What about her, things she said, things she's done, makes you think that?
Well, I mean, the honest truth is I could never vote for Trump. And so it's whether I would vote for her or not vote. And I believe you should cast a vote. So for sure.
Separate from a guy in your vote, I'm just asking you, without prejudice, what about her makes you confident she'd be a good commander-in-chief?
Her history in government and in the courtroom so far, she seems very capable. She seems stable. A lot of what I've heard this evening and other evenings when I've listened to you in mornings is, people think that she's not, because she's worked in the Biden administration, that, she's responsible for a lot of what has happened. And to me, vice president hasn't necessarily been the strongest voice in terms of policy for administrations, although yes, she's a Democrat. Yes, she's in this administration, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's had voice or sway or final authority. So I give her room to make decisions that are different than Biden's.
John,
Mark,
any
can I
questions?
ask you a question? Well, I want to ask you both of you North Carolina questions.
Yeah, I should have raised my hand earlier when Josh was on. We would have been a good. We would have been a good position.
You would have. Maybe we'll bring Josh back.
Yeah.
So you've got this. You've got this governor's race, and it appears that the Democrat, unless the polling is really bad, that the Democratic candidate is 10 to 15 points up on the Republican candidate. There isn't that much polling. There are only 2 polls in August, but the Republican is not polling above 40. Democrat is polling is in some way polling in the low 30s. How likely is it, Mark, or both of you, in your estimation, that you could have Trump win the top of the ticket with a gubernatorial candidate, with a Democratic gubernatorial candidate winning by 10? Like, there was a time when stuff like that happened, when Reagan could win a state and the Democratic senator could win by 15 and Reagan could win the state by 10. That was 40 years ago. I'm looking at this race and I don't really understand. Also, so that's my question. Like, won't those numbers have to equalize in some fashion? And the other question I have for you, Mark, is if Harris wins North Carolina, does that mean she is going to win the presidency? I sort of assume it means she wins the presidency because it'll mean other things. That's not just localized to North Carolina, unless this gubernatorial situation somehow tanks Trump because Robinson, the Republican, is so crazy that that he somehow just like voters are allergic, like stay home because they're allergic to voting for him. And those are my two questions.
There's a point at which he can't make up a big gap, but I think the governor's race will close to a small enough gap that that it won't be dispositive in terms of Trump's chances. And there are people in Harris's orbit, including, I believe, her, who think of the 4 Sunbelters, North Carolina is their best bet. And so you could see her winning North Carolina and losing Pennsylvania. That's not impossible. And if she loses Pennsylvania and Trump wins the other 3 Sunbelt states, he wins. So it's not impossible. It's unlikely for the reasons you said. It really depends. And again, I continue to ask every Republican and Democrat, of the 4 Sunbelt states, which is the one Harris is most likely to win? And a surprising number to me can say North Carolina, given that it's been hard for Democrats. Yes, ma'am.
I will just say this, John, I'm not speaking directly to your question about whether, Trump wins if a Democrat can win in the state, but, Roy Cooper's super popular. And during the pandemic, he did a beautiful job. And our state health officer, who now works in the Biden administration, she did a beautiful, beautiful job too. I don't know if there are other North Carolinians on the call who don't agree with me. I'd love to hear that. But he's got a lot of sway now, and it may or may not carry over. I don't know.
All right, Jeannie, thank you for joining. As always, really glad to have you here. All right, guys, I brought you two together because we're running out of time, but I want to try to get you both in. So Harold first, then Jeremy. Just tell us quickly who you are, where you're from, who you're supporting, what's on your mind, and so I try to cover you both in one fell swoop. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick, I'm from North Carolina as well. I'm voting for Trump. My quick thing was just about, I'm an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran. I spent multiple years of my life in the Middle East. And I think what you started the show with about talking about the day Trump had at Arlington, and then sort of that ad that Harris put out. Do you think he will lean into this issue of defense? Because I can tell you, like, a lot of guys that I serve with are very, very, very concerned about Harris and what she would do if she was commander in chief. She doesn't really talk about the military. It's like she's almost ignored it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll address that. Thank you, sir. Jeremy.
All right. Thanks, Mark. All right. So I'm from the great swing state of New York, specifically Yonkers, just over the New York City border, where we did our part for sanity by kicking out Jamal Bowman the day before Biden melted down in the debate. My point was just to pick up on the whole commander-in-chief issue, is that should be just an enormous advantage for Trump against Harris, or just about anyone the Democrats would have put up. Because I think the biggest thing that I've changed my mind about since Trump came down the escalator was just the fact that it just seems to be a simple statement of fact that the world is much more likely to be a safer place if in a Trump administration than in either a Biden or Harris administration. And that is less about the particular qualities of Biden or Harris and more about the fact that the Democrats are
other people lose. Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jeremy.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's right.
The Democrats are deeply institutionally committed to, in the words of Barack Obama, a lot of stupid shit when it comes to foreign policy. And there are enormous gains from not doing said stupid shit. And, the fact that the world has gone to hell to a much greater extent under Biden than Trump just illustrates that point. And, certainly don't see any reason to believe that Harris has strong enough convictions to change that, especially because, again, I think this is reflective of the Democratic consensus on foreign policy more than the individual qualities of the candidates.
All right, we lucked out by pairing you two because you spoke the same issue. I think that Trump will emphasize this quite a bit. I think it'll be a big flashpoint in the debate if there is a debate. I think you're going to see increasing number of veterans coming out and weighing in on this race. And I think it's incumbent upon her to explain to folks, not just because she's relatively young, not just because she's a woman, not just because she's got limited national security experience, but because of the reality of gender, that she's going to have to explain to people and give people confidence that she clears the commander-in-chief bar. It doesn't mean she can't, but I think she's going to have to give a major speech, and I predict she will. And I think you'll see her engaged on that to try to convince people. It's the one thing, or not the one thing, it's one of the things that the press being on her side so emphatically has protected her from. She's faced no questions about this in the media, which I find kind of extraordinary. Not just about gender, not just race, but her resume, her experience, just the fact that she's a blank slate on this stuff is kind of incredible. And I do think she'll have to address it. And as I said, I do expect President Trump on both the forever wars issue and on the strength issue. I expect him to make it a huge issue the rest of the way.
So I think strength is the key here, right? In other words, like people, it's been a long time since people seem to have voted on foreign policy as an issue where it was one of the two major issues that people voted on when I was a lad. And it's been sort of 30 years since it was like front and center in that way. Terrorism, of course, became a major issue, is a foreign policy issue, but not quite that. So we boil it down to strength, and they are clearly concerned. The speech that she gave at the convention had an entire section that was intended to convey that she could be strong or would have strength. The problem is how much meat you have to put on those bones to convince people, and I think that she has a natural disadvantage and Trump has a natural advantage there. Now, the other thing to watch for is that there's a whole bunch of generals and Washington generals and types who she can marshal on her side to say she'll be great, she'll be fantastic, she'll be really tough. I had a meeting with her and she really assured me that she's going to use lethal force and all of that. You have right now H.R. McMaster, who is one of the great intellectual generals of the American military over the last 30 years, has a book out about his time as Trump's national security advisor, in which he said Trump was dangerously naive about Russia and he had some weird ideas about things that I didn't like. I don't think that McMaster is going to endorse. I find it hard to believe that he would be that political in this sense. But she has that. There is this coterie of military leaders who will say, worked with Trump and he's too dangerous or he's too unserious or he's too feckless or something like that. And that could have some effect in counteracting his natural advantage on strength, which is the stand-in for foreign policy and military readiness.
I would just say
issues.
strength is usually important, but opposition to the forever wars, which is kind of the opposite of that in some ways, is also massively huge. She's going to have to explain herself, I think, more than she has on and how she sees that. There's NATO, there's China, there's ISIS, Iran. There's all sorts of issues where I follow her closely. I have no idea what kind of her core beliefs are on these things. And that's the policy. There's also the symbolism. We showed this morning on the morning meeting, this video that her supporters put out that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but Bill Clinton had to do it. Barack Obama had to do it. There's the mommy party and daddy party. That's just a reality of our politics. If you're a Democratic presidential candidate, you have to demonstrate to people that you're ready to be commander in chief. You'll keep the country safe. You'll make smart decisions. You'll know how to run the Pentagon. You'll hire a good Secretary of Defense. I'm not saying she can't do it, but she hadn't done it yet. And I suspect she'll be under a lot of pressure to do it. Jeremy and Harold, thank you both for joining. Please come back regularly. We ran a little bit over, which I don't like to do, but those two guys were great. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, Tim will be back, the morning meeting. Join us for that. 8 p.m. Eastern time, Katie's Coast to Coast debut episode, perhaps, if we can sign them up and find out who their agents are in time. I'll probably be back tomorrow night at some point, maybe even 9 Eastern, because these seem to, much to my shock, dismay, be working out quite well. John, so happy that you joined. I'm very grateful to you. As always, grateful not just to Katie's, but everybody who asked questions and everybody who joined. And we'll see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time on the morning meeting. Good night.